For more information, hopepregnancyutah.org.
On Wednesday, October 2nd, join the LEGO League team at the LEGO Robotics Gyro Sensor Clinic from 5:15 to 6:30 in the evening. This skill-building workshop is for first LEGO League team members. 2 representatives from each team and a coach are invited to participate in this free clinic. Students will learn the tips and tricks to effectively utilize gyro sensors on their EV3 robots.
Hola, te saluda Zoe y te invito a que nos escuches los lunes y los miércoles durante mi programa de 6 a 7 de la tarde, hora local, con música, noticias, invitados y más. Solo aquí en Radio St. George 100.3 FM.
This is Hannah with your Radio Dixie calendar for Monday, August 26th. There's the Faculty Art Show from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the North Plaza, 101. Men's soccer is at Snow College from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. in Ephraim, Utah. Women's soccer is at Snow College from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. in Ephraim, Utah. And there is the Harlem Globetrotters from 7 p.m.
St. George on TuneIn.
KDXI St. George, Radio St. George at 100.3 FM. And we welcome you to the Extraordinary Talk Show, a show to help you understand yourself and the world from a new perspective, and in the process, help you find your own personal extraordinary. And now your host for the Extraordinary Talk Show, Della Hill.
Hey everybody, and happy Monday. Welcome to the Extraordinary Talk Show. We are thrilled to have you here. Guys, this is a show to help you see yourself and the world differently. Because when you start seeing the world differently, your life changes. I went through this a few years ago when I was looking at my world and went, this isn't the world I want to live in. And so I started looking at it more closely. I started asking a lot of questions. I started looking at things that I'd always been taught and deciding if those things had real value for me or not. And some of those things that I found actually had tremendous value, but I hadn't learned the value that it really had all along. And that might have been because my teachers didn't do a good job of teaching, but more likely it was that I didn't recognize the importance of these things as I was learning them. One of these things that's so important, like critically important, like will change your life kind of important, is this piece. It's what we're going to talk about today. And you've heard this referred to as a miracle before, because it is. I want to talk to you about the power of forgiveness. Okay, and I'm even a little bit concerned that as I'm teaching you, that I'm acting like my old teachers. Like, oh yeah, forgiveness, this is something that's important. You should learn this. Take this little handout and put it in your bag and know that you're going to be better because you sat in this lesson today. I don't want you to sit here and listen and feel good about yourself for listening. I want you to realize when I'm telling you that forgiveness is a miracle that will change your life, I want you to feel the intensity that I'm trying to tell you that with. I want to tell you a story, a really incredible forgiveness story, a really powerful forgiveness story, one that did change my life for sure. First, I want to look at forgiveness. Everything has an opposite. What's the opposite of forgiveness? The opposite of forgiveness is judgment. And you might be wondering, who do I need to forgive? Well, the next question is, who have you judged? Because anytime that you have judged someone, you need to forgive that person for judging them. But even more important than that, why do you think you judge them? Do you understand that nothing has any value until we apply it? None. So you might see someone walking and you disapprove of that person walking. That person doesn't disapprove of themselves walking, but you disapproving of that person, that person walking, whether it's good for them to be walking or bad for them to be walking, has no meaning, has no value at all until you decide, I don't like how that person is walking. Now there's meaning because you attached it. But you wouldn't have attached it unless that meant something for you personally. And what that means is that when you judge someone else, you're actually judging yourself, because you wouldn't judge that guy for walking if you didn't think there was something about how he was walking that was wrong, and that wouldn't even matter to you if you weren't so concerned about the way that you walk. Another example, let's use someone who's overweight. Perhaps when you see that person, you have judgment. And the reason you have judgment is because you have fear of being overweight. You might look at them and judge them the same way that you would judge yourself if you were in that body. Now, the problem with that is that person isn't your person to judge. They can do whatever they want. And in some cultures, the bigger you are, the more overweight you are, the better, because that means you're wealthy, because that means you can afford a lot of food. So in those cultures, being very, very large is awesome, is wonderful. It's looked up to. So do you see how nothing has meaning until you apply it? Because for someone to be overweight, you might look at that and find judgment there. Someone else might look at that and think it's wonderful and think, wow, that guy must be really rich because he can afford a lot of food. Right? Everything has the judgment that we place upon it. So if you look at a person and judge them, the only thing that you're judging is the judgment that you placed upon them. Until you placed that judgment upon them, it didn't mean anything. Which means that in order to correct that judgment, that person is not the person that needs to be forgiven. The person who caused the judgment is the person that should be forgiven. And in that case, that person is you. So here's my story. I was at church one day. This was a few years ago. And I have two sons, and my sons don't like to get their hair cut. I've cut their hair most of their lives, and they don't like the way that I do it. I can't blame them for that. That's their own place to place that judgment about that. And I offered them to take them to get their hair cut, and both of my sons said, "No, Mom, we like growing our hair out a little bit long. We want to see what happens." Okay, cool. My older son, both of my sons are awesome. The story is specifically about my older son. It's not even about him. But this was when he was still living at home, which he's not now. And my kid would come home from school every day and do his chores. Before I got home from work, when I got home from work, his chores were done. His bedroom was clean, the kitchen was clean, the trash was out, the dishes had been done. Whatever his chore was that day was done. I never had to question, is he going to do his chores before I get there? They are always done. At night, when I would go into his room to give him a hug goodnight, very, very often I would find him saying his prayers or reading his scriptures without me reminding him to. He would even, as soon as he got his driver's license, he was so happy to get his driver's license because it meant he didn't have to wait for me to be ready to go to church. He could get there early. He could drive the other car and take himself and not have to wait for me. So I'm kind of painting a story about my kid. Really good kid. Also scored like a 28 on the ACTs and had a scholarship. Straight A's. Awesome kid, right? But there was one day at church, a gentleman came up to me and said, "You know what? If your son were to show up at my house and ask to see my daughter, I wouldn't let him in my house. I'd tell him to go get a haircut." And that was a simple statement. Not that big of a deal. It was simply for this man, his guidelines that he had about his daughter. For him, this was about him and his daughter. For him, it was about the high standard that he was holding his daughter to. That's not how I took it. I took it as a direct attack on my son and a direct attack on my parenting, which meant it was a direct attack on me. I was hurt, guys. There's a reason that I haven't told this story before now, because I don't want to talk about something while I'm in the middle of dealing with it. That's not fair to you, and honestly, it's not honoring me. So I spent a couple of years thinking about this. And every time I would think about, okay, I should forgive somebody, this guy would come to my mind. And I was furious with him. He didn't know my son. He didn't know that my son had straight A's and was about to get a scholarship, and his bedroom was clean, and he did everything that he was ever needed to do without being reminded. This guy didn't know that. This guy saw that my son had long hair and commented to me about that. I was so hurt. I was devastated. I never told my son this story, and I hope he never hears it, because it wasn't about him, and I understood that. And really, my son wasn't interested in that guy's daughter anyway. She's an amazing girl. I know that girl. I love that girl. I think she's brilliant. But that's not the point. I was hurt. And I would try to forgive, 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 and I kept hurting. Every single time I thought about it, it hurt me. And there was one day that I was at work, the job I don't have anymore, and something struck me. I remember thinking, why haven't I been able to forgive this guy? Why is this still hurting me? And probably because it's related to my son, because if he just said something about me, I probably would have blown it off, but it was about my son, which makes it kind of more personal, you know? But why can't I let this go? And I asked myself that question. And I'd been asking myself that question for a while, and I must have been in a moment of peace, because the answer came. Once I was able to clear out some of the other anger and frustration and negative emotion that I had about it, once I was able to just be peaceful with it for a moment, the answer came. The reason I couldn't forgive that guy was because he wasn't the one I needed to forgive. I was. Because I had been every bit as guilty as that guy and more. That when he judged me, I judged him right back just as harshly. You bet I did. And when I sat back and looked at it, I realized how much I had judged so many others. How many times I had thought that because my hair was combed neatly that I was better than somebody who didn't comb their hair. How many times had I thought that because that day I was on time, I was better than everybody else who was late? How many times had I thought that I was in better favor of somebody, that guy, the boss, the neighbor, because of something I did? How many times had I thought, well, I have a nicer car than the guy next to me? How many times had I cast a judgment, an unfair, ridiculous, unknowing judgment, using only the information that I had, which was, I'm in this car, that guy's in that car. I don't know anything about that guy. Maybe he's driving that car because it's his son's car and that's what he has today. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. The point is, I was guilty of judgment. I was guilty of thinking that I was better than somebody else because of some quality or characteristic that didn't even matter. And guys, when I was able to look in the mirror and realize it wasn't that guy that I was angry at, it wasn't him that I was hurt by. Him making that judgment cast it into my awareness where I could not hide from it, where I could not deny it. And the only way that I could free myself of that judgment was to forgive myself. To forgive myself for thinking that I was better than somebody else because of a minor quality that happened to be in place at that moment. I had to forgive myself for judging others for all the ways that I thought I was better than them. And the truth is, that's flat ridiculous. I'm not better than anybody. Nobody's better than me, but I'm not better than any of them. And if I'm not better than any of them, I don't have a right to judge them. And yes, it's also true that they don't have a right to judge me, but that's not my business. That's not my problem. The reason that that guy making that judgment hurt me so much was because it was a clear reminder to me of how much I judged others. And when I realized how much I judged others, I had to start at the beginning. You can only start where you're at. You can't start anywhere else. And where I was at right that moment, I had to forgive myself. And forgiving that guy became a non-issue. Forgiving him didn't even matter anymore. Once I forgave myself, I didn't need to forgive him. Once I let go of the hurt that I was causing myself by being judgmental, I was no longer hurt by that guy. How crazy is that? And if that guy were to ever hear this story, he might even recognize himself in this story. And that's part of the reason that I've been hesitant to tell this story, is because I'm not telling this story so that you can be mad at that guy. I'm not telling this story so that that guy might hopefully hear it one day and realize what a mistake he made. I don't feel that way at all. If that guy hears this, I want him to know that I am grateful. I am grateful that he cast that judgment, which brought the mirror up so bright in front of my face that I had to see myself, that I had to see my own judgments, and I had to forgive myself. I could say that I have forgiven him because I have, except I never needed to. So that's not the point. And if he ever does hear this, I want him to know that I have forgiven him, except I never had to forgive him. I only had to forgive myself. Isn't that interesting? And here's the thing about the law of attraction. Yeah, we like to think about the law of attraction as how we're going to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend, how we're going to get more money. But the law of attraction, if you want it to use it for those things, you have to understand it for these things. The law of attraction brought that guy to me. I was in a vibration of judgment. And so the law of attraction said, oh, you're vibrating judgment. Let's bring you some judgment. Surprise, surprise, let's give you exactly what you've been doing. So the reason that that guy even came into my experience was because I attracted him. By my actions, by my thoughts, my feelings, and my own vibration of judgment, I attracted someone else who would come to me and show me that. And I'm grateful because it gave me the opportunity to realize the mistake that was happening wasn't him. I wasn't a victim of that guy. The mistake that was happening was that I wasn't loving other people the way I should. And in part of not loving other people the way I should, I wasn't loving myself the way that I should. So when you are angry at somebody else, try to hold up, this is what you might call the Essene mirror. Try to figure out what is it in you that gets pricked, that gets prodded. What is it in you that so easily responds to them? And is that something that you're judging in yourself? Is that something you could forgive in yourself? Because if you did that, whatever they're doing wouldn't bother you anymore. I promise that's how that works. To forgive means to release another from the perceptions that you have been projecting on them. So if you think that it's bad to be overweight because that means that that person is unhealthy, not eating well, and doesn't respect themselves, you're not thinking that about that person. You think you're thinking it about that person, but you're not. You're making a judgment based on your own projection because you believe that if a person is overweight, they must not have respect for themselves. Because when you look in the mirror and you've gained a little bit of weight, you start to lose respect for yourself. So you are projecting your belief, your fear that you might get overweight. You're projecting that onto that person. And ooh, isn't it easy to get angry at that person? Doesn't it even kind of feel good when that anger fuels you up? Is that how you always want to feel? Sometimes anger feels good. Sometimes it feels good to be angry. But don't you want to feel better than that? Because part of the problem that I have with being angry is anytime I'm angry, I usually say or do something that I regret later. So I try not to get angry, because when I get angry, it causes more problems. And if I can keep my anger under control, or even better, figure out why I'm angry and resolve it, then I don't hurt other people, and I don't want to hurt other people. Here's another important thing. When you're making a judgment, not only are you projecting your own belief onto that person, which isn't none of their fault, none of their business, but when you cause judgment, when you cast judgment, there has to be a little part inside of you that feels kind of guilty for doing that. Because don't you know that you don't like to be judged? So don't you know that when you judge someone else, you're doing exactly to them the thing that you don't want them to do to you? And don't you remember the golden rule? To treat others the way you want to be treated? So if you're judging, even if you don't say it out loud, even if you don't go up to them, even if you don't mention to them, even if they never even see you look at them, if you looked at them and made a judgment, what you are really doing is judging yourself. Not them. You're judging you. And if you want to be free of that, you have to forgive yourself of that. And it helps to look back and say, why am I judging? You know, I'm judging that person because they have a nicer car than me. Well, why is that a bad thing? Do you think that they stole or lied to get their money? What does it matter to you if they did? What if they didn't? What if that was completely honestly gotten? How do you know? Are you still going to be angry with them? Because if it was you driving the nicer car, if the places were switched and you were the one in the nicer car and they weren't, would you be angry if they judged you? Would you be hurt if they judged you? When you're judging, guys, when you are judging someone else, you're actually judging yourself. And anytime you do that, it tells you so clearly what vibrational stuff you need to work out. If you're angry at that person because they're overweight, it's not their fault. It means that you have some kind of blockage, something about being overweight or overweight people that's in your craw, that's stuck in your craw. And you get to figure that out. And this, guys, is why I'm so grateful to that guy. Because that gave me the chance to look in the mirror and realize how much I was judging others. That gave me the clear picture, staring right into the mirror, telling me he's not the one with the problem, I am. And guys, am I perfect? No. Because I'm still growing. And that's okay. Do you know that you can be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time? Which is what you have to be. Because in this life, you're never going to get it all right. And you have to know that that is all right. In this life, there are always going to be some things that you don't get quite as good as you want. And you have to know that that's okay. But what you have right here at this moment is as perfect as it can be right here in this moment. And today you're going to learn something about yourself so that you can make yourself a little bit better, so that the perfect you are now is going to be perfect from the perfect that you are an hour from now. But they're both perfect. They're both masterpieces, and it's all in progress. And you can give yourself permission to not have everything right. In fact, you can forgive yourself for not having everything right, which should be the easiest thing, because when you realize it doesn't matter what you do, this world is too big for you as one person to figure everything out. This world is too big for you as one person to resolve everything, to perfect everything. And wouldn't it be boring if you could? The idea of being extraordinary doesn't mean that you've reached perfection. It means that today you are perfectly imperfect and working on being perfecter. And it means that tomorrow you're going to be perfectly imperfect and working on being perfecter. That's what being extraordinary is about. Being extraordinary is being able to look into that mirror and recognizing the things that you need to forgive yourself for. And this is one of those beautiful ways, too, that when you forgive yourself, when you look inside and find forgiveness there, do you know what forgiveness is? Forgiveness is love. Forgiveness is looking past all of the projections. Forgiveness is dropping all of the projections. Forgiveness is dropping the judgments. And we talk a lot about limiting beliefs. What do you think those limiting beliefs are? They're judgments that you've held on to, that you've carried. And you can forgive yourself for making that judgment. And you can remove and transmute that limiting belief. And you can have a better life from that moment going forward. And the more you do these things, the more you change what's in your world. Because if I can successfully forgive myself for judging and forgive myself when I do judge, then maybe I'm not going to attract another man into my life who's going to tell me all the places that I'm judging and show me all the places that I'm judging. Instead, hopefully I'll attract people into my life who are learning to love without judgment the way that I'm trying to. That's what I want to attract. Because what I really want is love. I want love in my life. I want love throughout my life. And I want love with all the people in my life. The people I pass by, the people I don't know. That's what life is really about, is sharing love. Forgiving is love. Give yourself that gift and give that gift to others. Guys, please check me out on YouTube. It's the Extraordinary Talk Show YouTube channel. There's old episodes, new episodes, and some of my vlogging that I do when I'm not even here on the studio. So come check it out. Remember, guys, I love you, and I'm so happy to be here with you every Monday. Be extraordinary.
You've been listening to The Extraordinary Talk Show with Della Hill. Search YouTube and Facebook, Spotify, or Podbean for video and podcasts of this show, or go to radiostgeorge.com. We'll see you next week for another edition of The Extraordinary Talk Show.